Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I am not at school today, but I'm coming to you from the internet. And I'm going to show you about sprite animation today. So, I think this is the right one. I got two versions, one with the stuff and one without the stuff. Look at our circly character. He's turned into a little ripped wizard. He's got some cool muscles there, I guess. But wizard hat. He's like super strong Gandalf, I guess. Which is, nothing wrong with that. It's all good. But the exciting thing is when you walk, it animates. And I can walk in different directions, and it goes through different cool frames. I can go to the left, and I can go to the right, and I can sort of go in various directions. Some will take precedence over others, and that's not perfect, but my goal here isn't to make it perfect. For example, as you walk, like it just comes out of his pecs or his abs. Actually, he's just like ab shooting fireballs. These are things that are awesome for you to work on if you want to. Again, the requirements for this project in terms of the criteria is just to show that you can create this and build it yourself along with me. But hey, what a great thing if you're into the idea of doing your own animation or stuff to add on new frames of animation. So just to be clear, I did not draw these sprites. I think that's obvious. But I got them from the Spriters resource, and I'll make them available so that you can follow along with the same character to make it pretty easy for you to use. TheSpritersResource.com is a fantastic source for game sprites of all kinds of different games. So first of all, I'll show you the structure of my folder. So I guess I'll open that up and I'll show you that in my roguelike beta. Check it out. I got two open. Whatever. I'll close one of them here. So just to try to focus it in, here's all my code, and then I have a folder called sprites, and inside there's a whole bunch of sprites, and I'll make that folder available to you. It'll be a zip file on the website, and you can just download the zip file and put the sprites folder into your project folder, and that will be fantastic. Don't forget to unzip it. If that's a zip file and not a folder, big trouble. So get that going, and if you're not sure, I'm sure there's people around you that'll be able to help you out and make things work. Okay, so I'm going to run through now the main tab. Whoa. The main tab. Whoa, so many windows. Sorry. I'll run through the main tab changes I'm going to be making, and basically that'll be loading the images. So check it out. I got right here. Here's all these lists that I'm going to use for the animation. So I'm going to have basically a different list for each action. So here's the idle action is what the character looks like when they are standing still. I have a walk left, a walk right, a walk down, and a walk up, because those are all sort of separate collections of pictures. Last but not least, there is a current action list, and we're actually not going to load it with pictures. We'll talk about what that is later on, but we do need it. This will represent which one of these 5 different actions or more, if you want to improve it, are you currently doing. So current action will be important later on. So in my setup, doing my usual setup things, but also I am making my arrays. So don't forget that you have to instantiate them, is a technical term. We use the new keyword basically to create an array list. I keep saying arrays, I think. Sorry about that. I get confused. Make all of our array lists so they're ready to add things. And then you can just go ahead and add the pictures. So, what pictures are what? You could just look at them, honestly. If I open that up again and I go to sprites, you can just see like, that's what I'm using for idle. It looks like there might be a bit of an idle animation where the character is like kind of bobbing up and down or something when they're waiting for you. You could experiment with that if you want to. Here's the character walking away from the camera, walking in the different directions. So I've got all that mapped out. There's a bunch of other great ones, like, I'm casting a spell, I'm casting a different spell. I don't know, a third spell. And then, I like this one, teleporting in. Oh, I took damage. So there's a bunch of possibilities here, but we're just going to work with these ones. So these are the pictures for, this is the one I used for idle. You could put more than one if you wanted to. I put 4 of the pictures in for the walk left. I put these 4 in for the walk right. Feel free just to, copy the fact that I've chosen these ones. It's not special. It just works for the sprite sheet. These are the ones I chose for walk down. These are the ones I chose for walk up. And of course, if you choose a different sprite sheet, you're going to have to choose different pictures, but that's all fine. Last but not least, I set my current action, and I set it to be idle when we start the game because the character is not moving. So the current action is going to be idle, which means the current action is pointing to this list, which contains only one costume. So that's what we'll animate. Okay, so that's the setup, and that gets everything ready to go. The rest of the changes are going to be happening in the hero class. So let's go over to our hero tab, and I'll show you what we're adding in. I've added in 3 new variables. So first one is sprite number. This represents which picture is currently shown. So you can remember probably that we, in a particular action, like walk up, for example, there's 4 different pictures. They're numbered 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's what sprite number holds, a number between 0 and whatever the last number is of our array. So which picture in the list are we showing? And then we have count and threshold. This is going to represent our time delay between animations. You don't want to just be switching between pictures every frame, unless you have a very detailed sprite sheet. And in this example, we do not. So I need to inject a bit of time. So it takes, between changing from picture 0 to picture 1, it's going to take a certain number of seconds. So count is going to represent, it's going to keep track of how much time has passed between frames of animation. And I can spell, I really can. Well, not really. And then threshold is going to keep track of how long until you change change sprite num, really. So this is, say this was 5, then count would have to get to 5 in order to change sprite number. And sprite number is how we're deciding, what picture to currently show. Okay, so that's the deal. Sprite number, threshold, count. If that was confusing, feel free to rewind and listen again. It might make more sense as we go through and see what's going on with the code. So now I'm going to go to the constructor. Sprite number is going to start at 0 because we're going to probably start with the first picture in whatever animation. I guess there's only one. It's the idle animation when we start. I have threshold set to 10, but we can see what happens when we change that number. This represents how many frames passes until we will go to the next sprite number. And then count's going to start at 0 so that we begin at 0, counting all the way up to 10. So that's a lot of changes there. The show function is going to change drastically. I'm going to get rid of, you can see the ellipse, the fill, the stroke. I've just commented it out because who knows, maybe I'd like to bring it back again sometime. But you don't need to keep that around. So here's the story. We got, first of all, this is the threshold mechanism. And we've used this before. Basically, every frame, we just count up by 1. So count will go from 0 to 1, or 1 to 2, or 5 to 6, or whatever. And then we check to see if we got to the threshold. If we got to the threshold, so we get, in our case, 10, then we reset count back to 0, and we increase sprite number. So sprite number goes to the next, basically, it goes to the next picture in the animation cycle. So this structure here is there's no while loop, because the show function is called inside of a loop that's probably in your play function. Well, I guess ultimately the draw function is the loop that controls that. So that's how we sort of organize that. There's one more important part to it. Sprite number, if we just left this like this, eventually we'll get to beyond the bounds of the array. So check it out. I also have an if statement to say, hey, if the sprite number ever gets beyond the current action's number of pictures, then we better shut this down. We'll set it back to 0. So we basically loop back to the beginning of the animation again. So if sprite number goes beyond however many pictures there are on the animation, we go back to the beginning, so we loop it around. So this will cause it to, let's just go back to the beginning. Okay, woo, no problem, right? Well, we still got to actually show. I don't think this is super important to put here. I really think this is the wrong place to put it. We should probably put this in setup, but we do want to make sure that we center our images so that our X and Y is the center of the character. This might not be 100% true, but for now I think it's a good decision to make. And then we just draw the picture. So this is a little bit complicated because we have to get the picture out of our current action. It might be idle, it might be walk left, it might be walk right, who knows. But whatever it is, we're going to get a picture out of it. And sprite num is the number that keeps track of which picture we get. So when sprite num is 0, we'll get picture number 0 out of whatever the current actions array list is. And when it becomes 1, we'll get a different picture. When it becomes 2, we'll get a different picture, and so on. I still just draw it at X and Y, and then I've chosen to adjust the size a little bit. I've made it bigger because just using the same width and height for this particular picture kind of made it look squat, and I didn't think it looked good. So you can adjust these numbers as you think is appropriate. Okay, next, this is a change we're going to have to make to our key presses. So check it out. When we press a key, not only do we have to change the speed, or move the character, we also will choose our current action. So W key is pressing up. So we'll move up, literally change the Y coordinates, but we'll also set our current action to the walk up array. So we'll animate that cycle. If we press S, that means we're walking down, so we'll move us physically down, but we'll also set the current action to the walk down array list. So we animate from pictures from that array list. And so on. Pressing A means move to the left, so we switch to walk left. When we press the D key, we will be walking right, so we switch to that. And then ultimately, we have to get back to idle somehow. So I have this little bit of code that says, if you're not pressing any of these keys, you set current action to idle. So that's the story there. And that's pretty much it. It's quite a bit to wrap your head around. I think this in particular, since it's been a while since we've done any kind of timer, we did this type of thing in the animated GIF. I think that was probably the last time we used this type of structure. And there's sort of two counters in here. There's this counter for counting up the, counting the variable count to threshold so that we can change sprite number. But there's also this thing for sprite number, because once we get to the end of the current action array list, we got to loop back to the beginning. So there's a bit of complexity in there. So please feel free to ask questions about that next time you see me. Yeah, I hope that is everything you need to know to at least make a good start on sprite animation, to give you a bit of insight on how video games create these illusions of character animations, and then hopefully it's also a good building point for people to add on to if you think this is really cool and you want to add more. So feel free to do so. So again, check out my website for a zip file, and I'll upload this to YouTube. Have a great class, everybody.